every day are just astounding. And just as mobile is transforming the way we live and work, connect, and engage, it's having a similarly astounding impact on the world of business. Mobile is a critical part of business these days, but there's so much to consider beyond the impact to efficiency, productivity, and overall growth. That's why we've assembled a panel of experts to talk through what it means to have an effective mobile device management strategy, from security considerations and logistics to the prospects for growth. Joining me on the panel today are Deval Bhatt, Senior Sales Engineer with Samsung, Jim Haviland is Chief Strategy Officer with Mobile Thought Leaders, and Chris McDonald is in Business Product Development at Sprint. So, let's start with the basics. How do you define a mobile device management strategy?
Well, that's a good question. There's a couple of components to mobile device management strategies. And the way I look at it is you have to take one step back and really look at what is the issue you're trying to solve, right? If you can address the concern of your business, what are you really looking to do? That's going to help you develop that effective strategy. And there's a lot of components to it. We're going to certainly talk about them, but I will highlight one that we kind of leave oftentimes to the last, really is device security. And it's how do you manage and how do you secure your device?
Yeah, it's a great point because Mobile Thought Leaders, we've got thousands of people all over the world that get together to talk about how they're putting together their mobile strategy. And when we ask them what they want to talk about, mobile strategy is at the top, mobile security is top 5, but they almost never get to the security components. It's like that's the hardest one to fund. But they're always looking for different ways. They're all coming from different places. The levels of maturity are all over the place, but they're all quite certain that there's parts of their business that are going to have to change to take advantage of this, but how to get there, how to get through all the components, how to get everybody on board, that's always the challenge. So it is really a holistic activity to get to that mobile strategy or even something part of this digital transformation strategy that a lot of people are getting to.
Yeah, those are both really good points. I think the key you notice there is you remove the device piece of it to start with, and your starting point is understanding your mobile strategy. And what does that mean to your business? How are you empowering your employees or your customers to access information? How do you want to manage that? Because historically, that's been maybe two different sides of the conversation. It's been somebody who's historically looked at device management from a expense sort of perspective, managing those devices, managing access, and how do I control who has it, when they get it. Then the IT, the traditional IT side of it is the security piece of it, and how do I manage those users who are mobile and how they have access to my information. So understanding where you're asking that question and having a mobile strategy that covers both of those perspectives, because those two things are colliding, and really understanding how that's going to impact your business. That will not only give you sort of your strategy going forward on dealing with the types of tools you're going to use, but then really from a security perspective helps you understand really what's at risk, and from using a security term, what is your attack vector? So how mobile you are is more you expose your environment, gives the attacker more opportunity to have success against you and your business.
And there's no time to wait, because if you don't do something now, your departments, your individuals are all going to go do mobile stuff
on their own.
Right. And there won't be any part of any strategy, just be trying to get their work done.
That's right.
Well, that's the risk of it. When you hand a device to a user, and if you're not setting it up correctly, you're not managing it correctly, you're leaving it up to that end user to say, okay, here's a tool, use it to the best of your abilities, and that you lose efficiency in that.
Or you have a whole lot of people that are just bringing their own tools. I mean,
exactly.
that stuff comes to the door every day. That was the most, for years, that was the most terrifying moment when a new device gets released. It's like, okay, what are these things I'm going to have to plug in over right after Christmas? What are all these things that I'm going to have to plug in and integrate next month? And because these people that have high titles are going to want to do something with their stuff, and if I don't have a strategy, it's a mess.
That's right. Agreed.
So it's not as easy as just making sure everyone has a phone or a tablet and saying go forth and work hard. But it sounds to me like the way you all are talking that this is really a permanent shift, for businesses having to incorporate mobile. And is there a place for your business if you don't move in this direction?
If you look at the world of computing, how much of the world's computing is happening on a mobile device at this point? It's what people have. It's where the customers are. It's where your employees are. really, I can't imagine doing anything right now that you wouldn't think through the mobile component of that next new thing.
If you look at what we do on a daily basis, right? I'm an engineer for Samsung. My role really involves using mobile on a daily basis, and I consider my work. I do 90% of my work on my handset and my tablet.
Yeah.
Right. So at the end of the day, that's what's going to make me productive. Right. That's going to make me more efficient as a worker. Having that mobile strategy, being able to use a phone, but use it effectively. Right. Because at the end of the day, just providing, like I mentioned, providing a tool without instructions, without setup, without guidance is not really efficient. It's not profitable.
Well, we see this demographic shift as well with the younger workers don't even think about it. I mean, it's just a natural part of how they think about getting things done all day. It isn't like, oh, I'm going to be on my mobile device now. Oh, now I'm going to, it's like, where am I? What am I doing? And how am I going to get my work done in the moment? And that's a very powerful thing to enable if you're a business. That you want that productivity, you want that engagement. So there's something to go get right from that.
Right. It's the form factor. We finally got to a place where it is just about the form factor of how I consume my information. I used to have to decide, okay, if I wanted to do something more complex or intensive, I need to sit down at my desk or sit down at a laptop and do that type of work. And now it's that capability and reinforcement of be able to do your job in a mobile sense just takes away that decision, and I can do that on any screen. So the form factor now is available to anybody. So business can be conducted in any place.
So let's talk through some of these operational efficiencies, making life easier for your employees. What is involved in moving and transitioning from a desktop-driven business model to mobile first? And what examples can you give of some companies who have done that and what the operational efficiencies they found?
So what I would tell you is we've shifted from just using a handset or using a tablet for what its main purpose would be to applications. Right? We are now an app-driven world. So if you consider your own personal device, I consider my device, right? The average person has about 35, 40 applications, and that number keeps growing on their device, which means that if I'm a business and I'm looking to expand, I'm looking to grow, I'm going to focus on building an application that's easy to use, that's going to provide my employees with the right resources when they need it, how they need it, and be able to handle business. And with applications, that's really going to be the future, right? If you think about the shift in the industry as a whole, we have now, and I will say it as a millennial, we have now moved into that realm. We are an on-demand society. We want things available when I want it. If I take my phone out of my pocket, I want to click a button and get what I need. That's where we're moving to, and that's where applications really come into play.
I think a good starting point is the conversation around BYOD. It used to be an add-on. Now it's almost standard as part of thinking about how you're going to deploy devices, giving the availability of any type of device to your employees to bring. And then it depends on what your sort of your user base is and what your business is. Certainly think CL strategy is key to that as well. It's not lost and not forgotten for sure. Because depending on if you want to have the ability to dictate what type of device, what type of applications, a CL strategy is still very relevant to be able to deliver on that.
Well, it's such an old question, like how many devices are there going to be for you to get your work done? I think it came out of that notion of where you're going to get a laptop with your work. But now I think we know, like we don't question how many lights are there going to be in the building. It's like, well, as many lights as we need to have the right amount of light. And we know that there's going to be devices for this job. We see people all the time in like warehouses where there's a tablet that goes here, there's one over there, there's one I keep on me for man down and for notifications. The number of devices that we get in any particular job, the productivity you get back from whatever you're doing with it blows away the cost of the device, especially when there's so many options for devices as a service and for baking these things together, so you're paying for it in the same way that you're reaping all these great rewards. If it does anything for you at all, that $20-$30 a month, it goes away pretty fast. So we see lots of places where it's really a matter of I touch 5-6 devices a day, and we don't think about it.
Right. There's operational efficiencies you gain from a CL strategy. When you think about, put yourself in the shoes of an IT administrator. If I want to pre-package a solution and be able to provide a device that's set up, ready to go, manage, I'm able to make that employee more productive. And at the same time, because it is a managed device, you can also use that as an employee perk. There are customers I work with that actually will hand out a CL device and say, great, during business hours, your device is going to be locked down. It'll do these things. But after hours, because at the end of the day, we're all consumers, after hours, my device will have access to other things. Yes, I can still have control. Yes, I can still mandate certain things on the device, but I want to provide my employee a perk. So that's a different way of looking at a CL strategy, and at the same time, providing a better experience for your employee.
With mobile thought leaders, we've seen some distinct steps along the path that companies often, if they've got a central process about customers, they've probably already built that app, they outsourced it, they built that app to make that thing happen. But even companies that don't, there's so many third-party systems that have a mobile app that go along with them. But even just getting used to digesting those in an orderly fashion, in a secure fashion, that's a great way to make those first steps, is figuring out how to deploy that app, get people using it, making sure that they're using it in all the right places, developing a security protocol around it, identity and access management. There's a lot of decisions to be made. But you think of things like Workday and Salesforce, chances are there's things within your organization that you're already using today that you could just take a more mindful approach to enabling those apps and helping people consume those apps. Is that next, to get to that place where you can actually do a good job of defining that first app development project. But I promise you it's coming. You're going to develop an app at some point.
Right.
Do you agree?
I completely agree, and I think that it's a good description of kind of the new way of doing business and tackling where everything is going, which is the cloud. If an example that came to mind, though, in thinking about sort of that transition, a more staid company, if you will, that's been more engineering specific, IT focused, they came to decide, okay, what is our app? And the answer to that was voice is our number one app, and then email is the number two app. So they built the strategy around, okay, how do we enable those two things as our primary focus for our employees and be able to access the corporate, not just be able to log in remotely, but be able to enable, voice is an easy one, but really enable the email application in a secure fashion. So that put them on a journey to evolve from the desktop-oriented email server behind the firewall to move some of that into a cloud infrastructure, then to take that compute and that access to that data and then shift it into the mobile world completely, and be able to have the identity access control capability as part of that, be able to have control over the data that's on the device now, that's part of the email server that you're controlling. So that was a bit of a roadmap to get there, but I think that's key for them because they decided that our number one app here is the email for our employees, because this is what they do their business 90% of the time. So we need to make sure that we identify that, enable that, and highly secure that from our perspective.
Right, which is a horrible app. It was the number one productivity app, but it's now, we all hate it, right? We all hate it. So, but the moment you get past that, you have to figure out document management and then business process around those emails, which are when hey, we got to come up with better ways of thinking about those bulk sends that everyone has, or those CCs. So because I want people to be productive as opposed to going, right? So, and then we see people moving to how do I, put messaging into that? What's the appropriate place for that? And it's not even about technology now. It's about changing behaviors of individuals to take better advantage of the technology. Is this an email, or is this text, or is this any one of the IMing platforms that are out there?
That's also a good thread to consider as part of the contradiction of the millennial kind of dynamic, which is we're very used to technology and accessing it when we need to access it, but then being told, okay, this is what you need to use to access. This is how we're going to manage all of that. It's still, so there's still a place for IT to come in and have some decision making over here is how we're going to enable your unified communications, how you're going to be able to manage your email, use the documents that are part of your everyday use in this context, but in a mobile sense.
And it's a great, because one of the things that's changed, it has to be a dialogue.
Right.
Because they're not just going to use the tools you gave them. If it doesn't work, they're going somewhere else, my friend. And now you've lost control. You've got the illusion of control now.
That's the inherent risk, though.
Yeah.
When you attempt to mobilize without having that defined strategy, is it going to be easy to use? am I going to get pushback? Am I going to have a user say, if this is too complicated,
Yeah.
I might not want to use it.
Right.
Or I might feel, well, how can I circumvent this? How can I make it easier for me to use, rather than coming back to, let's say, IT, say, hey, we want to help you optimize this, or working in collaboration prior to deployment. You see security holes pop up. You see that's a huge security risk.
And that's that's one of those other shifts that's going on as well. Is you have to have that dialogue set up where you're able to help. You have to listen to your users because they will make other decisions.
Yes.
One of my members said, "Hey, we've got 3,000 employees. We've got 3,000 IT decision makers now. So we have to figure out some way to engaging them in solving their problems, but also solving our problems, which are the technology parts."
It's designing a holistic solution. That's really what it comes down to.
And maybe making change management part of the process.
Communications are, everyone that in Mobile Thought Leaders, we come up all the time is, if you really want to do this, if you want to get to the digital transformation, communication skills are an integral part of making that happen. And learning to listen and learning to understand more than just sitting in the basement and putting out applications. They won't help you.
So we talked a little bit about some of these efficiencies and helping your team members work, better and smarter. But what about some success stories when it comes to mobile creating a whole new way of doing business for a company? Do you guys have any examples of that?
Well, yeah. I mean, one of the first companies that I worked with in this was Safelite Auto Glass, and they actually started their journey because they wanted to get out of the real estate business because they had all these places where you go and you have your windshields done.
Storefronts.
And they said it was a horrible experience. The coffee's bad, the TV's broken. We've all been there. And said, well, how can we make this a better experience? And slowly but surely they came up with this idea of rolling out there. And now it's a huge part. To change their business. They didn't get rid of all the storefronts, but they got rid of a lot of them. And they created these apps, and they created these ways of having an ongoing relationship with the customer. And they've got better relationships with the insurance companies. And there was a slow move towards. We start with an app, but then it's like it really is a digital business now. And they've got deep insights into every one of their transactions, so they can constantly change their procedures to be able to take 4 seconds out of that change, 3 seconds, and when you do it 20 million times a year, we're talking about some real time.
It's real ROI.
Yeah, it's real ROI. So, and I think that's really what we find again and again. People make those first steps, and that can be hard. I mean, on the other side of the spectrum, I'm working with a company right now that's still replacing some paper forms, and they still wanted an ROI on replacing paper forms. Like, okay, I understand. I'm trying to be compassionate about that. But what we know is that next year and the year after that, they're going to find even more things to go after, and it's going to make a big difference.
It's a great point you make about replacing paper forms. So I actually have a customer I work with, about 100 employees, and to your point earlier about digital forms, something simple as digitalizing their employees, adding the ability to manage them remotely. This company was a home construction drywall company, and for the longest time, they would dispatch a worker to a job site. That worker would basically be working, but there would be no way to manage what's going on. Supervisor would have to come out. There'd be extra expenses. An efficiency standpoint, you're losing a lot of time. You're losing a lot of money by having to repeat dispatch, drive around. And so we sat down. We worked with them on a strategy to, one, digitalize their work forms, but also create an entire workforce management tool. We mobilized it onto a handset. We were able to lock it down, customize it, but at the same time, we were able to bring them a 50% increase in efficiency. And that 50% increase instantly translates to less cost, more profit. ROI is the hardest thing to quantify, I think, in my opinion. It really becomes, they have to see it to believe it, right?
It's an early, it's a first stage question. Because after a while, it's like, well, gosh, what's the ROI of being able to break into new markets for 1/10 of what it would otherwise cost?
Right. Yeah, productivity is a classic example of where the obvious benefit of mobility has shown or has shined really well in that particular space. I think what we're seeing next kind of wave is then how do I take that and turn that into a selling opportunity? And one of our customers is essentially a door-to-door type of sale. So the rep is coming to the door, knocking, and pitching a service. As part of that pitch, they have the ability to say, okay, if you are interested in these set of features, I happen to have a technician who is who is a neighborhood nearby, I can have them here in the next 2 hours. I can schedule them and have them here in the next 2 hours. And that empowers them to make a more complete sale instead of saying, okay, I'll be back with you. I've took your information electronically and I'll send it to the front office, and then a rep will call you later to schedule something. That can make a sale happen right then and there with somebody who's nearby and understanding all that complexity and time that will take
Which is
together.
huge, right? The impulse buy for something like that,
Right.
it's a big driver.
Well, and it's got to do wonders for staying competitive, I would imagine.
It makes pop-up business, happen.
Exactly. That mobile
Yeah.
strategy,
Yeah.
that's who's going to drive business.
Yeah, I think we're alluding to, which is the B to B to C aspect also that's in this mix.
Sure.
Which is really powerful and the next level of capabilities from a mobility standpoint, which we can talk about.
Well, once you digitize, you've got the great capacity for integration and automation, which is really, what would you do right now to grow your business or to make your business more profitable? It didn't involve technology, it didn't involve digital technology. I can't imagine what it would be.
Right.
Because even if you're making buggy whips, you'd figure,
Figure out the best way to make buggy whips.
well, you're going to have to figure out where to order stuff and how much to keep in an inventory. I mean, the data's there. You'll get better.
That's fascinating. I think we've done an excellent job of selling the reasons why mobile technology is so
Yeah.
valuable for your business. But I have not forgotten about the point you all made when we started this, which is about security.
Yeah.
So, you mentioned it's critical, but how important is it? And what are some ways businesses that aren't properly protected are being exploited?
So I will tell you, from a security perspective, people are afraid. When you hear security, you instantly think IT. You think, I'm not going to be able to work. I have challenges. I have issues. But what we've really found is with security is it's paramount to the success of the business. If you do not secure your devices, you will have challenges. Think about all the hacks we hear about. Think about all the things that are reported. Think about the data you actually store on your own personal device. How much that's a corporate device? All your applications. If I'm an employee and I don't have a managed device, that device, I might be able to download an application that's malicious. That my data might be being reported into the cloud somewhere. I might not even know what I'm doing with my device, what's going on the back end.
Right.
And, I think there's a fear inherently in security because people take that as restrictive, but it's really not. It's simply that fine line like we talked about. How do you enable security, but at the same time enable productivity?
Right.
Yeah. I talked to a panel of chief medical information officers, and they were all telling me, for hospitals, they're all telling me that someone comes into my office every day and tells me that I'm not secure enough. Like, I know that. But the reality is, it's on the top 5, but it's number 4, and I've only got money for 3. And so you have to bake security into what you're doing and accept the fact that there is fear, there's going to be change, and the threat planes are changing constantly.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it doesn't look anything like it. And with mobile, the worst part of it is that a lot of these apps are scraping little bits of data on a regular basis as part of their business model, and you don't know when you're being breached. You don't, because it's a drip. So.
Yeah.
So the great news is the technologies and all the OEMs are getting better and better at giving us technologies that lets us be responsive to this changing threat plane. And you just have to have what one of our members, Vox Mobile, calls the open framework. You have to think about the fact that you're going to be changing technologies and maturing technologies over time to address the new threats and getting better and better and better over time, and be able to understand your needs in that way that isn't just about locking everything down, but creating security mechanisms that are part of the flow. And make it not make it harder to work, but just make it. I have to think about it less. So do I have to start with the VPN? No, the VPN's baked in. Thank goodness, because if I have to remember to do the VPN, I'm going to find some other way.
Well,
what's my password again?
Right.
Exactly. It's just funny you mentioned passwords. So,
it's on that Post-it on my computer. Yeah.
so
Because
that's
they make me change it every 5 days.
well, and the complexity. So that's actually a good point, right? The framework. So, for example, at Samsung, we built in our Knox framework into all of our devices. So that security platform, out of the box, gives you certain features. But the other part of it is that this enables much more options, right? Building that baseline, putting in a foundation of security, I think is paramount. Once you're there, then you can build off it.
Well, to the user, it doesn't feel like security. It feels
Exactly.
like convenience. It feels like, oh,
It's part of the operating system.
it's part of the operating system. And oh, by the way, it gives me something I really wanted, which was the separation of work and personal. That that I want privacy is the other side of this coin, and that's really the thing that we're all worried about is our privacy is being breached on a regular basis, and we're almost numb to it at this point. And so when you can add that, that's actually a benefit. That feels really good.
Right.
Gives you peace of mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, going back to understanding, so what sort of mobile device management gives an IT shop is the same PC management type of tools that you would have for your laptop. But with the exception that as users, they don't consider their handset or their tablet like they consider their laptop. So that's sort of the first basis point. Is just you've shifted now to the same sort of management capabilities with a whole different set of security challenges in front of you. Instead of one connection or maybe two connections that I can isolate and chop off on a computer or laptop, now I've got 7, 9, 10 potential different types of ways to communicate with the device in a malicious way. So network type based attacks are very common. Rogue access points. That man the middle attacks, and as we, as Sprint moves to 5G, as the industry moves to 5G, the proliferation of different ways of cell towers and communications are out there, introduce even more opportunities for these type of man in the middle type of attacks. So that's just the network piece of it, and then you've got malware. I think obviously the bad actors, they've known for a long time that the mobile device is the most vulnerable asset to go after, but they're really doubling down. And as the shift has changed, so has their attention. So we're probably going to see, the next couple of years that mobile malware will be a third, even close to a half of all the malware that's out there. So side-loading content, just inherently trusting the App Store in itself is a losing strategy from a security standpoint. Certainly there's some,
It's a layer.
it's a layer, but understand that there's some layer. That
Right.
It's a layer, it's a first checkpoint.
Right.
But that you need to make sure that particular app, even though it may pass the security checklist to get in, that app may be identified as that's a great one to have malicious exploit to have happen to. So once it's on the device, then I can come in and exploit that app through different mechanisms.
The architecture is so different with mobile devices from the standpoint of all these apps most are being built quickly. They're being built with lots of other SDKs and code from other people, and it just becomes, there's so many paths for something that was a good app to become a bad app under certain circumstances. That you really have to have a responsive approach to technology. Yes. And what's worse is that your mobile device, you take it places you would never have taken your laptop.
Right.
It's with you
all the time.
24/7,
Right.
and so those threat planes are ever present. So and you're going to take it in places where you may not be focused on being your secure work self.
Right.
And you're going to make bad decisions. Oh yeah, let's try that.
Inherently, that's so mobility. There's a social aspect to mobility, right? If I have an application, I'm going to say, "Hey Jim, take a look at this app.
Check it out.
Why don't you go download this app? This is really cool. Let's play this game." Because at the end of the day, people look at a phone, a mobile device, as both personal and work. And even though I might use my handset for work, I still am using it. I'm taking my pictures. I'm using it to.
Oh no, it's an appendage.
It is. It is.
It's mine.
It never leaves my pocket. But and that presents that challenge of what is really going on with the device, right? How do I control or how do I manage? If I'm an IT administrator, it would keep me up at night if I would put a handset in the hands of my employee and have them basically use it as their personal device. I'd love for them to do so, but I'd want to make sure I'm able to put boundaries around it, put a little bit of control, because again, to mention my point about Samsung Knox, that framework, if I can build a framework, build that security platform, then I'd be a little bit more confident them actually using their device, knowing that behind me is this platform, right? That there's inherent security built in that I can use. And when I want to optimize, I want to make changes, I certainly can. But the last thing I want to do is be more restrictive. I think back to my days working in IT, and the most common password that employees used was company name followed by the current year. And they, to your point, put it on a sticky note and left it on the monitor screen.
Absolutely.
How secure is that?
Right.
None.
And if I were to mandate some complex password, to give you an example, 15 characters with a special character,
You're in
no
trouble if you're
repeating numbers.
mandating a password of that